Hi, it's time for another session of Timesheet Time. I'm Chris, and I'm gonna go with you through another animation scene where we look at how the timing is done. We're gonna figure out the timesheet and learn how this animation style came to be. I chose a scene from A Chance of Meatballs by Sony Picture Animation, and I think this scene is animated by David Gibson. Yeah, let's get right into it and look at it. So here we go. She sits down and smashes her feet in his face, and the impact is really cool in this film, and all of the animation in that film is really cool. Let's start with the poses to have a rough understanding of that. She's standing here, coming over, and we get a nice scene where she's between these rails, and then she just gets into a pose, and now she will start letting her hip fall, and she just falls. And this is all just a really straight line where she just slaps down. And from this closed pose, we now open up into a wide open pose, and then we let the feet fall. And we have the feet fall really far outside the rails in this really nice and round pose. Then we have an unusual long hang time, and then the feet just come in and we see them moving super straight onto the eyes, and we smash into the eyes. It gets really nice. Blowing up of the head, his mouth opens up super quickly from this small contained head into this huge form. And we also see his fingers turn into this really weird but super fun shape. He as well goes from a smaller and contained pose here into something where he's super big and in this area of the screen. Okay, now enough of the poses. Let's do what we were here for, and let's look at the timesheet. And what we want to look at is how she sits down, how she goes from this down pose into this up pose. We want to look at this hold, how it is defined, and then we want to look at how the feet arrive here. So let's look at how she sits down, because that's quite interesting. I'm going to start here and just track her belt buckle, and we're gonna do it on once because her movement will get really fast, and that's super interesting. And with the motion blur it's really hard to say where it is, but I guess somewhere around here. Now we're considering this in 2D space, which is important to remember because the camera is moving. So let's look at how the camera moves here by looking at railing on the side here. Just consider that, just so we can keep it in mind. And what you will also see here is that this motion of the camera is the same than what we get in these frames. So that basically means that the motion is stopped and we only see the camera moving here. Alright, so let's look at the timesheet for this one. So here we get our start frame, which is 9:04. I'm just gonna make this a key. It probably wasn't one, but I'll just gonna make one. We go up to around 6, and we're probably just gonna ignore this because this is the ending of another motion here where the hip comes up, starts quite slow, then we have a bigger move and we slow down again. So we come in, smaller move, bigger move, and smaller move. Compared to the other motion, this will all be quite compressed. So I would probably want to draw it as something that's really small because we only have that much motion. So let's try to make our timesheet as small as well so that we can compare it to the other motion. Just erasing that and updating it. And this is really a small motion. So I'm just trying to keep this like so, because we get the largest motion in the beginning. Now after this motion, this was this part of the arc, we get the drop down. And the drop down is a very quick motion. So let's start here. This starts at 9:07. This is where we are right now. So let's make 9:07 our key. When I say key, it doesn't mean that the animator decided that there is a keyframe here. It just helps us to understand this motion a little bit. So we're going to look at this motion now, this long motion downwards. And since that is way longer than this, I'm just going to make the timesheet chart much longer, just to show how much distance moves so that we can kind of sort of understand what the spacing here might have been. So the movement starts at 9:07 and we go down until 9:12. 9:12. And the thing here is this is only 4 frames. So we have to place 4 frames on this chart. And this is actually less than what we had for the really small motion up here. So the difference between the spacing before and the spacing after is going to be huge. So let's start up at 7. There we go. Let's find the middle of the motion. That's roughly here. Maybe 9. 11 has nearly hit the floor. So let's place the 11 here. Then the 10 is quite a jump. And then we have the 9, and the 8 is a slow in. So what we get is a huge jump. We get the same jump afterwards as well. So we get a small jump, big jump, even bigger jump, maybe even something like increasing spacing towards the end. Then we have a little bit of a decreasing spacing and we hit the floor. So let's give this some numbers. I probably guess that there is a breakdown around where the feet leave the floor, so around 9 or 12, which is when we hit the bottom. We might have another one around the 9, so this might be when her hand leaves the railing. This might be one of our breakdown frames here that define the motion. So but what we get here is we get a really small motion with really tight spacing. Then we get this large spacing and then we stop. And when we look at the spacing afterwards in relative space, her butt is just stuck to the floor. So from here on, we just get no motion. How can we show that? Well, we make a really short line and give it all of the rest of the frames. So we hit at 9:12. And it just stays there to 9:24. And this means we have to put 10 frames here, and they are all in the same place. So the motion is slow, then really fast, and then it stops. It has like a really slow slowing. If you're working in 3D and have a graph editor, you will get a motion that looks like this. And there has been a blog post by David Gibson as well, where he actually mentions that they have sometimes graph editor curves that look like this, which means we have a motion, it gets really fast, and then it suddenly stops and stays there. Comes in, feet go up, and smash in his face. Let's just draw the curve so that we remember it. The down motion here until she hits the floor. This motion here is all the red motion, like so. And then we have the yellow motion, where it just stays here. In 2D, this is now moving up again. But this has exactly the same spacing as the camera motion. And this is the camera. From here, let's just take another look at her feet and how they are animated. And the good thing is we can kind of start here and just make a new frame. Her feet start moving around here. Let's track them. And this is roughly in the same place. Motion blur makes it really hard to see them here, but so I'm guessing around here. Here, it seems like it might be here. Even further, now we slow down, and this foot keeps going up while this foot goes down, and then we leave the frame. Like so. So the motion that we get is, again, a 2 motion clip, basically. So where we start down here with the feet, with this foot going up, kind of like so. This. Then we slow down, and then we smash it back down. And for the down motion, I'll just use another color again once we get to the timesheet. Okay, so let's timesheet again. So feet leave the floor, and we're going to use all of this motion first. I'm going to focus on the left foot. The right one is similar, not the same. It's slightly offset. You can see the left foot is already going down while the right foot is coming up, but it's very similar. So I'll just gonna focus on one, because keeping your eyes on 2 things at the same time is just not easy. And we start at 9:10. It's a big line, so let's make it long, and this starts at 9:10. Let's call this our keyframe. And our next one is when we reverse. It's here. And this is our 9:17. 9:17. And this means we have to place 7 frames in between. We start really quickly and we slow down towards the end. Let's just see what we get. In the middle of the time, we're already close to the end, somewhere around here. Let's make this just a breakdown so that we can remember it. And now we have to place the first two. The first two start smaller, and then we have a big gap, so something around this. 11, 12, 13, and after 13 we already slow down. 14 still quite big. 15 gets smaller, and then we have it again. 16 and 17. So what we get here is a fast motion that slows down. Let's draw the arc for that one. Again, we get a motion that speeds up, gets very fast, and then slows down really quickly. Up here we reverse and we go back down, and I'm gonna use another color for that. And that motion actually is just a little bit longer, so I'm just gonna put it down below here, make it a bit longer, not much. So we start at 9:17, and we just go until we leave the frame at 9:24. 9:24. And in here we also have to place 7 frames again. Fun. It's the same range of time. And we do exactly the opposite. So we start small, have our smaller steps, get bigger. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we really speed up. Like here. Should probably place the others up in this area. So keep it slower, and then we really speed up towards the end. So what we get here is we start slow with really tight spacing, and then we get larger and larger and larger and as we speed up. And the other foot does roughly the same thing. So again, slow down into this pose, and then speed up out of this pose, which is what we get by wide spacing. And we have a really explosive start. We start with a really big jump in the beginning, and then really slow down as we come into the reverse here, and then we speed up and get much faster than before in this area down here. And then we have the last bit, the fun bit where she hits his eyes. We have a time that is longer than it usually would take for these feet to move here, and then they come into the frame. Let's see how they come into the frame. And it's really funny because we have the feet out of the frame, so somewhere out here, and then coming in really quickly, so they move all of this distance in one frame, and then we hit, and in the next frame they are stuck. There is a little bit of movement in the character. Overall, what we get is this timesheet where we have a lot of motion actually, and we're starting at 9:32 where we are outside of the frame, come into the frame, hit, and then stay. So 9:32, 9:33, 4, and hit 9:35. So what we get is this really quick motion where we just come into the frame and stop dead. And this is fun because it looks like it hurts. And the rest then here is the character having his hand leave and go into this really curled up pose with a little bit of an overshoot, and also his mouth opening from nothing like here into this anticipation overshoot thing, and then we open, and in the next frame this is already nearly fully open, and in the next one then we get this fully open shape. So it has basically the same thing where we get the same feeling. We start small, go into a small start shape, and then we just smash into the final one. And also here this pose just stays and hits. It's the same as the feet, which makes it really funny. So that's it for this one. It's a different animation style where we play with the contrast in the spacing a lot. We have really small shapes, really big shapes, and when we hit really hard. We have these transitions from really tight spacing to really wide spacing between just 1 or 2 frames, which is unnatural but really funny to look at. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Have a good day. Bye bye.